Welcome to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Chetawanze.
Today we have a special guest, Baggy Shanker, but popularly known as Baggy Shanker, is a British Labour and Cooperative Party politician who has served as Member of Parliament for Derby South since 2024. Prior to entering Parliament, Baggy was elected leader of Derby City Council in 2023, becoming the first Sikh council leader in Derby's history. Before his political career, Baggy worked as a project manager in Rolls-Royce's Civil Aerospace division and for the chemicals company Celanese. In Parliament, Baggy champions opportunity, social justice, and strengthening public services while maintaining strong ties with communities across Derby South. Welcome to the Black Paper, Baggy.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you. So we've it's been another interesting week in politics. But today, what we want to do is rather than talk about just everything that's going on, to focus really on one of the people who has widened participation, at least in Derby South, for people from our African heritage community. But but in doing that, to learn more about you, to ask about your politics, and to also just talk to our listeners about what political participation that is expected from them, but also that is expected from you as an MP. Now, before getting into all that, Baggy, I know you've just come back yet again from Gorton and Denton, where there's a by-election. How was that experience for you?
Look, it's always interesting for me to talk to residents, to talk to voters, whose hands we're in, because it's their decision that puts us in the positions we're in. So whether I'm knocking on doors in Derby or helping colleagues elsewhere, it's always good fun, but it's always grounding. It makes you understand why we do what we do and who we do it for. And yeah, good experience in Gorton and Denton. There's various challenges there, and lots and lots of conversations with lots and lots of residents that they've got a fairly simple choice in this complex world we live at the moment. It's a simple choice where they want to vote for Labour, a caring, unifying party that stands up for everybody, or do they want to vote for division and scaremongering by voting for reform? That's the sort of take from my few days I've spent in Gorton and Denton. So yeah, really simple choice, I think, at the moment for residents in that area, and whether that's a reflection of the way politics will be done in the next few years is yet to be seen. But at the moment, I think for voters in this by-election on Thursday, a really, really simple choice, and we've got a fantastic candidate in Angeliki Stogia. She's been in Manchester, made Manchester a home for over 30 years. She's been on the council. She's done quite a bit with local transportation issues. Very, very effective in my view. It's a pleasure meeting her, and I wish her the very best.
Okay, I'm the resident tour here, even though I'm not a member of any party. You said voting for division, so I agree that reform represents division, but won't we say that Labour also represents some form of division? After all, Andrew Green was suspended from the Labour Party, and it's one of the reasons why he stepped down anyway. So you guys also have that division. So why should people vote for Labour? Why not for the Conservatives, for example?
Well, no, we're going to have to disagree on that. I don't think we do stand for division. There was complex issues behind Andrew Gwyn's resignation. Most of those are out there in the public domain. But look, it's really, really simple for me. Ever since I've joined the Labour Party and since its inception, many, many decades ago, it's a party which, for me, represents everybody. It's a party for me which believes in in unity, in strength, and really importantly, opportunity for all, irrespective of your background. The Conservative Party, we've seen many a times, but in modern history in the last 14 years, what they did to public services, what they did to local communities. And if anybody thinks that what they've done was good in the last 14 years, then that's a matter of opinion. But I saw firsthand as a councillor, as leader of the council, as Ndukwe said earlier on, just how they decimated public services, how they decimated the NHS, and many local authorities, public sector organisations were left to pick up the pieces of austerity and how badly it affected public services. So yes, I don't think that the Conservatives currently are a viable party. Many of those Conservatives who are responsible for that devastation and that destruction are jumping across to Reform anyway. So, Reform are almost like a 2.0 of the Conservative Party. So I don't accept that they're a viable alternative. I don't accept them to be a serious political party at the moment. They're hemorrhaging support, and a lot of their members who were parliamentarians at the time over the last 14 years of these cuts are jumping across to Reform, and I suspect more will go across there as well.
Unfortunately, I'll have to agree with you there. I think the Conservative Party needs reform. Pardon the pun there. Well, that's a pun. But let's go to the meat of this. So tell us a bit about you. You are a member of parliament from a minority group. We are from, myself and Ndukwe are from minority groups as well. So I want us to have, rather than an adversarial conversation, this is basically the idea behind this is to give examples, show a shining example for people from our communities of what to do, how to get involved politically. So for me, my first question really is a bit about yourself, how you grew up, and all of that good stuff. The influences, what influenced you into politics? Why did you enter politics, and why the Labour Party specifically?
Sure. So, I didn't set out to be a politician, a councillor, or a member of parliament. My father settled in the UK back in the sort of late 50s, early 60s from the Punjab in India. He was one of the first to come over and settle in the UK to support the country in its efforts to rebuild after the destruction of the Second World War. And because Dad was one of those who was the first to come over, subsequently as more people come over to support the sort of recovery effort, they would approach Dad for help, advice, and guidance. And remarkably, when I reflect on this, Dad never spoke a word of English. He couldn't read, he couldn't write, but he had the networks and he had the connections of where to guide people for help and support. Basic things when they first come across here, housing, finding a job, all that sort of stuff, which was a lot easier, I suppose, in them days. In the sense of availability, but a lot more difficult when you couldn't speak English, read or write. I'm the youngest of 7, and Dad always wanted me. Then was saying, "Dad, Baggy, you've got to get involved in sort of some community work and help and support." And I was always really, really reluctant to do so. Unfortunately, Dad passed away just before my 21st birthday, and that was a turning point for me. I was thinking, right. He's always wanted me to get involved in some of the community projects he was involved in. And I started getting involved in community projects. And then from there, it was somebody suggested I stood for council, which I was pretty reluctant to do to start with, to be honest with you. I put it off for many years, and then I thought I'd give it a go. So I stood in 2005, 2006 initially, and wasn't successful. And then in 2008 I stood and was successful in Sinfid. I've been a councillor there now for the best part of 18 years, served in various cabinet roles, and then leader of the council for just over a year. And in 2024 got the opportunity to stand for Parliament and stood and won that election and got elected to Parliament. But if you look back, I think it's a mixture of building relationships with individuals, with organizations. It's about hard work. I did an apprenticeship, an engineering apprenticeship, which was straight after school. So that gave me a good grounding, gave me a great opportunity as well. To be honest with you, as an apprentice, you can continue, working whilst you're still studying to gain formal qualifications. And I want to see that opportunity there and available for youngsters now. But it's hard work. It's tough. It's discipline, and it's focus.
Okay, thanks for this. Before I give the mic to ask a question, I want to pick up on something you said. You talked about your dad having good networks, and you also talked about knowing people yourself. What's the role of networking in basically influencing people, influencing politics? And I'm asking this within the context of, for example, what is emerging in current political terms with the Epstein files, and the fact that clearly there are big networks that are being used in a not very positive manner. But I'd like people to understand that role of networking in influencing people in playing politics.
Okay, so when I refer to the term of networking, I 100% mean that in a positive way, and I mean it in a way of helping people who need help. I can on a daily basis be dealing with animal welfare issues, to job opportunities, to housing issues, to immigration issues, to policing matters. The variety is huge, and there's no way me or any other politician or any other member of parliament can be fully versed and up to speed on such a array of issues that we need to be able to support our communities with, because they'll come to us for whatever help they need, and that's totally understandable. So you need to be able to know who you can turn to seek the best help and guidance for the residents who come and see you. So that's what for me, that's what networking is about. It's about knowing who's got the right influence and advice and guidance so that we can serve our residents the best. And it's about directing them to the right place for the right help, whether we direct them and they seek that support directly themselves, or whether we help and make that introduction, make that connection, and seek the guidance for them on their behalf.
And it's interesting you talk about that network, because I'm sure we'll get to that at some point, because one of the things that you've done in the community is actually use that network to help a community group, a faith group that was looking at buying a building, and then you knew who they could have a conversation with to help make not to help them get it, but at least help them get a better understanding of how best to go around getting that. But one thing, and this leads into this question, according to this 2021 census data, you represent the sixth most multicultural, diverse constituencies in the East Midlands. So how do you navigate the different nuances inherent in these communities? Because if you walk down, let's say, Normanton Road in Arboretum, which is where you were born, in the ward in which you were born, one moment you're speaking to an Afghani shop owner, next thing you're speaking to a Nigerian shop owner, an Eastern European shop owner. In fact, yesterday you said to me you had to go to an Iranian event. So how do you navigate these? And everyone looking at you saying you should understand how we think, because you're also from a minority ethnic community. How's that been for you?
Look, I make it absolutely clear. Derby has been my home. It's been my life 52, 53 years. Born in Arboretum, lived most of it in Normanton, and now I live in Littleover. From my nursery school to my university has all been in Derby, and my 35 years of working at Celanese and Rolls-Royce, two of Derby's largest employers and companies. And I say this without any hesitation, Derby and Derby South in particular's diversity is one of our strengths. It absolutely is. While people come from different backgrounds, different faiths, different cultures, the aspirations, and this is the key thing to me, the aspirations is mainly the same. People want secure work, they want good education for their children, they want decent pay for their efforts of work, they want safe streets, they want a good future for their families whilst they're working, and then beyond work. So my approach is really, really simple when it comes to that. Listen first. You've got to listen to understand these issues of what people's concerns are. Understand. So listen and then understand. And if you're not understanding, ask the relevant questions to gain that understanding. And then again, for me, my agenda isn't set by me. My agenda is set by the people who I represent. So then, once you've listened, once you've had them conversations, make my priorities the priorities that people are talking to me about. That's what sets my priorities, and that's my way of handling the sort of multicultural society and the diverse communities in Derby South. It's relatively simple if you just follow that approach.
Okay. So the as Cheta would know very, very well, where we come from, politicians are shielded behind officialdom and a lot of time security entourage. So and I think one of the biggest culture shocks for people from our part of the world is if you're on the train in London, for instance, it's not difficult to bump into a member of parliament, and you're wondering how on earth, what,
Where are the
what's this
mobile
person doing?
policemen?
Without mobile policemen, without the security cordon. But but what that has done to a lot of us is to see that these people are unreachable. Well, this is an MP, he has far more serious things to do than to engage with me. So how would you encourage your constituents to engage more with you and to also stress the importance of engaging with you? Because that to a large extent is what builds the bulk of the casework you're either able to do in your constituency or the interventions you're able to make in Parliament.
Yeah, look, it should never be the case that anybody feels that their MPs aren't approachable, their councillors aren't approachable. But I can understand, as you say, many people coming from countries where that is the case. So fundamentally, I think we just need to ignore what it may be like elsewhere. Here, I am absolutely approachable. I mean, I have funny stories when I'm at Sainsbury's or in Costco. And a couple of days ago, I was putting air in my tires in my car, and somebody come along and said, "Should you be doing that? Shouldn't somebody else be doing that for you?" It does make me chuckle a little bit, and I'm thinking, yeah, I wish there was maybe somebody doing that for me. But no, look, we have to do these things, and it's absolutely right. We have to do these things because we always have to, remain grounded. It's a huge privilege to be the member of parliament for the area where you've brought up and grown up. But we all always have to be accessible to be able to do that job properly in my view. And I can understand why sometimes people may think politics can feel a bit of a distance, away from people, but that's absolutely not the case. And that's why I have regular advice surgeries every 2 weeks at the council house, alternating between a Friday and a Saturday. People can come just pop in and see me. I spend time in the community when we're back from London, all day Friday, sometimes Thursday evenings, and then bits and bobs at the weekend as well. Going directly and talking to people. I pick up casework when I'm sat in the local pub. I pick up casework when I'm out and about. So my advice to anybody would be, don't see us as somebody who you can't approach. Don't see us as somebody who you can't talk to, whether you see us out and about, or whether you just need to pick up the phone, give us a call, drop us an email, contact us on social media. The more we hear about the issues that concern people, the more people who get in touch with us to tell us what those issues are, even if it's the same issue, helps us set our priorities, helps us set our agenda, and helps us be better representatives of the people that we're here to represent. Politics is about human experiences, and to understand that, the more people we can speak to, so we get a broader understanding of what their concerns are, the better it is for us, and the better it is for the communities that we represent.
Okay, that's a good answer, I think. What you've basically talked about touches on cultural differences, I would say. So you are second generation, or is it first generation? You were born here. I always confuse that, whether it is the person who moved countries that is the first generation, or whether it is the person who was born here that is the second generation. Could you help me correct that once and for all?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's a wrong or a right answer. I've always said the first generation is my parents who moved here.
Okay.
So I'm second generation. My children.
Okay. So which makes myself and Ndukwe first generation in that respect. So there's this, and I think this plays into the kind of narrative that people like Reform, Advance, and then the newly minted Restore UK are trying to push about cultural differences. Cultural differences exist, and I think making an effective nation is about accepting those cultural differences and having to navigate them. So my question really is, how do you navigate? And it harks back to the first question that Ndukwe asked you regarding the multiculturality in your own constituency. How would you advise that people navigate those clear and so you, for example, where you grew up in this culture, we did not. So how would you advise people to marry those two differences, especially when raising children who are growing up in this culture? Those little things. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So look, just to sort of clarify a little bit of maybe misunderstanding or just a myth. When you say sort of I grew up in this culture, the culture I grew up 30 years ago, and my home life with my parents who had not been here that long is a world away of how my children are growing up now. We're still the same family, the same sort of values and beliefs as we were then, but the actual experience for my children, and rightly so, I'm not saying this in a negative way, I'm saying it in a positive way, the experience of growing up that my children are going through compared to when I grew up, and I'm sure hopefully down the line in the future, experiences grandchildren will grow up in will be completely different again. So that experience, I think, evolves, and people want to do better for themselves, better for their children, better for the next generation. So that side for me is I'm really relaxed about that journey and that evolving. Look, voice matters and experience matters. Yeah. So as you say, for yourself and in Ndukwe, my advice would be is, and anyone I come across does this anyway. They just do it naturally. They've come to the UK for whatever reasons. whether that's for work or the experience. And people generally work really, really hard to make improvements for themselves. But to keep a link back to where you've come from is absolutely acceptable. It's really important to be able to travel forwards and backwards freely, to go and visit family, invite family here to come and visit, is important also. To be able to celebrate, right to what I said at the early on, to be able to celebrate that diversity, to be able to celebrate that culture. If it's different, that's fine, as long as there's understanding of it's got to fit in with greater society, and there's several different cultures, all who generally have the same values of respecting your culture, respecting other cultures, being able to practice your religion freely without, hindering anybody else. These are all core values which I see across all cultures. And Derby's success in embracing that is around tolerance, is around people working together. Some of the best celebrations I've been to are the ones that I've been to and seen for the first time. But on the same hand, some of the best celebrations and events I've been to is where there's a number of cultures and faiths and groups come together to mark the same thing, but doing it in slightly different ways. It's what makes Derby what it is, and I think it's fantastic.
Okay. So there's something that you said while you were responding, which is regarding people going back and forth. For example, because of work, I travel back and forth. But there's a fear that a lot of people have, fear of proposed retrospective or retroactive visa rules. Fear that this is happening in America, for example. Yes, there was reading a story of an English woman who was detained by ICE over there for 2 months. So there's that fear that, I might have to go to, I work across West Africa. I might have to go to West Africa tomorrow, and then suddenly I come back, I'm at the gate and I'm not let in. How do you, a lot of people feel let down. What can you say to people, and what role are you going to play in easing people's fears?
Okay, look, I'm not part of a ministerial team and part of government. I'm a backbench MP, so I'm really clear in my sort of position. I totally understand government needs to tackle some of the challenges around immigration, and some of this is due to previous governments not making rules clear enough and not taking strong enough actions in certain areas. And unfortunately, what's happened there is the whole immigration issue, legal migration, illegal migration, unfortunately has almost been wrapped up into one, and people think this is all the same, when it's completely different. People have or the country has made a call for needing certain professions, and people from across the globe and in many occasions, African countries have addressed that need and come across, left families, left careers, left homes, and come across to the UK to support the UK, but also to build a life for themselves. So I attended the Westminster Hall debate on this matter several weeks ago. Unfortunately, didn't get called to speak because it just showed how important this was to many Labour backbench MPs, because there were so many of us in there and we didn't get time to speak. I've also, along with Catherine Atkinson, my oppo in the other Derby seat, Derby North, met with the immigration minister to express the concerns of residents who are coming to see us in our surgeries, emailing us, phoning me. I think when people have come across with a set of rules, and currently, there's the 5-year settlement rule. and they're in the system on that 5-year settlement rules, to change them rules partway through the game is unfair. It's as simple as that for me. So I don't think that is fair. If government want to change the rules going forward because they see this being an issue, or they see further expertise and professionalism in certain sectors isn't required, then changing those rules going forward, so people can assess what the rules are before they make their decision to leave families, come across here, is fair enough. And then the consequences of that, or the impact of that, can be assessed, and people make a decision whether they need to come across. They want to use those new rules or not. Is a decision they can make before they set off on their journeys. But to retrospectively change the rules once somebody's partway through that process, for me, is not fair, and that's the representation I've been making.
And not to be, not to do your own job for you, Baggy, because you're very capable of defending your record. I do know that you've had some interventions for people in the Nigerian community here in Derby South who had a few issues with employment and visa rules that needed a strong word on their behalf, and you stepped up. But however, I do agree with you that changing the rules halfway for people who came based on a certain set of rules is unfair, and we will definitely, as we have done in the past, always reach out to you to say, look, make our voices heard. And the job of the MP, sadly, is never done. And as you've said yourself, sometimes reaching out, even on the same issue, is quite important. And that's why here people will not be. I'm sure they already know what I'm about to say. Write to your MPs. Go to these surgeries. Write to your councillors, because it's in that strength of evidence that their casework is built, their argument is built, and they can say, definitively that they are representing you in Parliament. But now, another thing, Baggy, is that during the passage of the Employment Rights Act 2025, you championed digital access rights for trade unions to reach workers. But the thing is that for many migrant workers, especially those in isolated agricultural or domestic roles, there's a fear of retaliatory visa cancellations, and this prevents them from joining unions. So what specific guarantees can you offer that, say, a migrant worker in Derby South who uses these new digital rights to organize will be protected from, say, an employer who's angry and then reports them to the Home Office out of spite? How do they know that their rights are protected?
Yeah. I mean, that's something I'd like to learn a little bit more about. I'm going to, nobody's come across to me with this particular issue at the moment. So if there are people affected by this, please do, like you say, reach out to us and tell me what the issues are. Look, for me, the Employment Rights Bill that we've passed is groundbreaking. It's the biggest upheaval and improvement in employers' rights in probably 20 years. Probably since last time there was a Labour government. People should be safe at work. People should be remunerated to a fair level at work, and work should be secure. It shouldn't be on the whim of. And let me just also add, most employers are good employers. That I can generally say by visiting lots and lots of businesses in Derby, and sometimes outside of Derby as well. You do unfortunately get some people who try and flex the rules for their advantage a little bit too much, and without any rules, there'd probably be more people who try to do that and not treat workers fairly. So look, wherever we're seeing infringements of workers' rights, let us know. I'll always look into it. I've been a member of the Labour Party for something like 27, 28 years, but I've been a trade unionist for the day after I stepped into work in 1989. so a lot longer than I've been a member of the Labour and the Co-op Party. Being rewarded
Trade
and
unionist.
treated.
Some of us here troublemaker.
No, I don't think so. The Labour Party was formed from the trade unions, so the principle of being treated fairly at work, having equal access to opportunity, being treated with dignity and respect, and having a safe working environment are fundamental rights. There's no employer who should be able to take that away from any employee or abuse those principles. And thankfully, it doesn't happen that often because of these protections. But where it does happen, we need to know about that, and we need to stamp it out. I'm a great believer of that. I always have. It's what I've believed all my working life, and you can do this in total harmony and cooperation with good employers, because most companies you go into, I was going to say any, but most companies you go into will say our biggest asset is our people. Our employees are our biggest asset. But then, some just need to be held to account for that and say, right, if you genuinely mean that, let's make sure the right safeguards and protections are put in place so employees are being treated fairly, they're being remunerated fairly, their benefits and their packages are fair, and when things go wrong, they're treated fairly, and in a process rather than sort of indiscriminate actions to deal with things that go wrong, because things do go wrong in society, things go wrong at work. Sometimes people aren't suitable for certain roles, and the best thing is they move on and go and do something else. But if they are doing their best and they're doing the role that's been expected of them, they absolutely should be rewarded for it. And there's got to be fair processes in place for when things don't work out.
Yeah, in fact, it's actually the cultural differences. I immediately understood when Cheta said we hear trade union and then some of us think trouble, and that's because in Nigeria we have the Trade Union Congress, which is let's say things can get quite dramatic when they get involved in issues. But I alluded to something earlier, and it just occurred to me that perhaps we should thrash that out before closing out the conversation, and that was your role in helping one of our community organizations to secure a building to help them continue to serve the community in the city center, and I bring this up because to say that there's a need again to drive that notion of a need to for not just individuals but for community organizations, for groups to engage with the MPs, because sometimes you might just have the answers or the networks in terms of pointing people to the right direction. So I just sort of like want you to speak to that, but also speak to the need for community organizations to be, especially our faith institutions, to be a main driver for the voice of the community and for engagement with people like yourselves.
Look, it's vitally important, and the specific case, an issue you mentioned, I'll come back to in 1 second. But the power of sort of collective discussion, collective representation, shouldn't be underestimated. Faith groups, cultural groups, community centres, voluntary groups all have a huge part to play in helping residents, helping society, and they do a fantastic job. It amazes me, 30 years into my journey, 30 plus years into my journey of working in the community, how much time volunteers and groups put together, and sometimes with paid staff as well. That's absolutely fine if organisations can pay people. But that voluntary sector and that community sector, the amount of work they do, the amount of engagement they do, the amount of help and support they provide their members is absolutely phenomenal. And I pay tribute to everybody who gets involved in that. Coming back to helping the church group secure new premises. Look, I had the huge privilege of going and visiting that group, mainly taken there by yourselves and Dukwe, to go and see the work they do, the number of people who are engaging with them and relying on their work was absolutely phenomenal. But what was pretty obvious from the moment you step in, where they were doing that work from was no longer suitable for them. They had grown the place they were in. And the pastor asked me, you asked me, look, is there more suitable premises which we could purchase and we could move in? So again, with that networking head on, you're always thinking, right, who can I introduce you to who to see if we can overcome a problem? In this case, it was a needing better premises to continue doing the excellent work the church does, and wanting to grow the offer. Sometimes it's help and support and guidance, but this time it was to acquire a property. In the same time, or roughly around that same time, the organisation was talking to me about saying they've got property which is surplus to their requirements. Are you aware of anybody who needs properties which we can de-invest from and remove of our portfolio? And that's it. That's part of that. It's part of that networking. And my role was to make a couple of introductions, and then I step away. If there's negotiations to have, if there's a deal to have, you make the introduction, and then let the people involved work out the intricacies and the details. And do that. But I'm glad I played that part. It worked. It's worked really successfully. It's created vibrancy to a part of Derby City Centre, which was struggling, and having gone back and visited a couple of times, it's obviously worked out, and it's worked out really well. So pleased to have played my little part in the overall scheme of things there. And this again is why. We can't fix everything. We ain't got the answers or the solutions to everything. But people just need to reach out and ask for help when they need it. Hopefully we can do something to help. Sometimes we can't. But the one thing I'm definitely certain about, we'll never be able to help if we don't know what the issues are.
Right. Okay. Thanks so much. This has been a very interesting conversation. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. So before we do that, let me ask my final question, and it's not really a question. Just what would be your advice? How would you advise people from minority African communities in the UK, especially when how would you advise them to get more involved in the political process? Because it's one of the things we know has caused us problems back home is the notion that it's only bad people that get involved in politics. And it has become a self-fulfilling prophecy where in Nigeria especially it tends to be the worst of the worst that gets involved in politics, and politicians are seen as dirty characters and all of that. What advice would you give so that people don't carry that mindset over here and as a result get represented by the worst of them?
Look, it's just, and I don't know the Nigerian system or the wider African system particularly well to sort of pass any judgment on that. I can only go by from what people tell me about it. But for me and for here and my interpretation of it, here at home in the UK is, your voice matters. Everybody's voice matters. Everybody's experience also matters. Politics works best when it reflects the people it serves. It's not an abstract process going off here. It's better when it reflects the people it serves. So getting involved is something everyone can do. It's not you've got to be in this position or you've got to be in that position. You have to have a certain level of academic qualification. Absolutely not. It's for something for everyone to 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 be able to get involved. And the way to get involved in is, to start with local campaigns. What are the things that matter to you? Start campaigning about those. Meet local leaders, become local leaders. There's a really simple way of getting involved in whatever you think is important to you. Lead campaigns, back campaigns, or support other people who are doing campaigns. Just sit alongside them, help, get involved, raise things with us, and things will move pretty quickly. I'll guarantee it. You'll be seen as somebody who champions things, and you start to get involved with it. And that's what happened to me when I was doing the community work that my dad wanted me to get involved in. As I spoke earlier on, I had no ambition I'll become a councillor or an MP. It was just because of that community work and those campaigns I was getting involved in. It just took you to the right. I'm a little bit annoyed by this councillor, or a little bit annoyed about not making progress here faster than as I think we should. And then you end up somebody saying, well, if you think you can do better, get involved yourself. And it just went from there. But that representation piece, the more you do it, the more voices you hear, the more voices you have in the room, gives you that reputation of being somebody who represents people well. And it's I've not got to the position I've got to by me doing what I do. I've got to the position where I've got to is with lots and lots of other people from lots and lots of different backgrounds in Derby, having the belief and the faith in me, saying actually what you're doing and the way you're doing, we like it and we'll support you to get you where you are. So get up, get campaigning, get your voice heard, speak to other people, and get involved would be my advice to people in all communities.
Okay, and the thing you didn't say, which I heard, is getting annoyed is a good motivating factor.
Sorry, what was that?
Getting annoyed is a good motivating factor.
Look, yeah. I mean, whether you call it, annoyed, getting passionate, getting concerned, all of those words applied. But wanting to make a difference, wanting to do something about it, is all really important. And I just think, I think there's lots and lots of future councillors and MPs in our communities. We just need to see more of it.
Okay, thanks so much for your time, Baggy. Let me give Njukwe to.
Yeah, so Baggy, I don't know how much you or whether you have any ambitions of being either a Secretary of State or even an ambassador, but how you answer this next question will determine your readiness for either of those roles. So last week, Catherine was part of a Afro-Niger Food Festival where she had to judge which country has the best jollof rice.
Oh,
now, but now Baggy, you've had a bit of
I'll answer on your behalf.
of
Ghana
Nigerian
has the best
jollof.
jollof rice.
Cheta, go away from here. You've had a bit of jollof here and a bit of pepper soup and the rest. And I'll just say, from what you've sampled so far, which country has the best jollof rice?
Well, I'm not going to get drawn into that, because one thing I will say, Nduka, I think when it comes to food, Catherine definitely does get more of the love than me. I can honestly say I've not tried. I've not tried that much more. So I think I'm going to pass this back to you and say I need to do a little bit more sampling before I make that decision.
Well said, Baggy. Well said. I think you're well on your way. All right. Well, thank you very much, Baggy, for joining us today. Thank you for your words, and thank you more especially for what you keep doing for residents of Derby South, especially those from our communities.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, so Cheta, that was quite an interesting conversation with Baggy. What did you make of it?
I mean, it's I think that it was a decent conversation. It was a good start. For me, the thing that stood out the most was how accessible a member of parliament is. Um, I mean, it's one of the reasons or one of the unstated reasons that many of our people make the move. That's accessibility. You want to be able to reach the people who represent you. You want to be able to ask them questions. Uh, given our objective, this was not meant to be an adversarial interview, but when you have the politicians, he did not know what we were going to ask him beforehand, but he still came on, and that is accountability, something that people from our communities would need to learn, need to learn and relearn over and over again.
Yeah. And I think being willing to put yourself out there also show that perhaps you had the confidence to say, well, I've done this for, these are my records. You can check them. You can hold my feet to the fire to them. And but again, having this conversation with him just sort of like makes the arguments I've been making for a while without engaging these politicians who, as we've just said, are very accessible.
I like the way
With
you said these politicians, because you're a politician.
well, without engaging us as politicians, without engaging us as politicians, there's no way we can push for those issues that really, really affect and that gnaw at us. So this, hopefully, I hope that this conversation with Baggy will inspire people to engage more, not just as individuals, but also corporately. So whether you're a community group, whether you're a faith group, whatever, whether you're a business, we do need not just individual, but also corporate conversations, corporate engagement with with politicians. So please, let's not relent in doing that.
Yeah, very good advice. Very, very good advice.
All right, Cheta. I'll see you at the next one.
See you next week.